Jason Miller had never imagined that a simple knock on his landlord's door would turn out to be the turning point of his life. Just a few months ago, he was like any other guy trying to make his way in the world, juggling 2 jobs, trying to pay the bills, and dreaming of something better. But when the rent was late, and the pressure of bills, family needs, and everyday survival pressed down hard on him, things felt like they were slipping away. The fear of eviction gnawed at his mind every single night, stealing sleep and clouding his thoughts. Jason lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood of Dayton, Ohio. It was the kind of place that didn't boast much, but offered a roof, a little space to call his own, and a few decent neighbors who knew each other by name. The apartment complex was owned by an older gentleman named George Harrison, a man Jason barely knew but had always respected for his quiet manner and punctual visits for maintenance checks. George was a widower in his late 60s, and although he wasn't the kind of landlord who lingered or got overly involved, he always maintained the properties with care. The first time Jason realized he might not be able to pay rent on time was a cold evening in early November. He sat at the small kitchen table, his hands trembling slightly as he balanced a stack of bills. His mother had just come through a tough surgery, and the medical expenses were higher than expected. On top of that, his old truck had broken down again, needing a costly repair he couldn't afford. Jason worked part-time at a local grocery store and picked up shifts as a delivery driver at night. But the hours weren't enough to keep up with the mounting expenses. The rent notice had arrived the day before, slipped under his apartment door. The bold letters "Past due" stared back at him, mocking his situation. Jason hated asking for help. Pride and stubbornness had kept him pushing forward alone, but now he was cornered. His savings were gone, and the next paycheck would only cover a fraction of what he owed. With a deep breath and pounding heart, Jason decided he had to face the inevitable. The next morning, he gathered his courage and walked down the hall to George's apartment. George answered the door after a few knocks. His hair was peppered with gray, and his eyes held the kind of wisdom only life's trials could teach. He gave Jason a nod of greeting and stepped aside to let him in. Jason swallowed the lump in his throat and blurted out, "Mr. Harrison, I'm really sorry. I'm late on rent. I don't have the money right now. Things have been tough." George's face softened as he gestured toward an old, worn armchair. "Sit down, Jason. I figured you might be in a tight spot." Jason sat, surprised by the kindness in George's voice. It was nothing like the cold or angry landlord he'd feared. "I don't want to lose this place. It's the only home I have." George nodded slowly. "I understand. I've been around long enough to know life throws curveballs when you least expect it. Tell you what, how about working some hours for me? I've got some repairs and maintenance that need doing around the properties." Jason's eyes widened. "You mean like work off the rent?" "That's right," George said with a small smile. "We'll keep track of your hours, and that will cover what you owe." Relief crashed over Jason like a wave. "Thank you, Mr. Harrison. I won't let you down." Over the next several weeks, Jason began showing up early, working side by side with George. The work wasn't easy, fixing leaky pipes, painting peeling walls, clearing the overgrown bushes in the yard, but it was honest, and it was a lifeline. More importantly, it was the beginning of a relationship Jason hadn't expected. As the days passed, George shared stories about his life. He told Jason about his younger days as a carpenter, how he had built the very houses and apartments he now managed. He talked about the loss of his wife, the challenges of aging, and the hope he still carried for the neighborhood and its people. Jason found himself not just repairing buildings but rebuilding his own confidence. George's belief in him sparked a fire he thought had been extinguished long ago. One afternoon, while they were repainting the porch, George turned to him and said, "Jason, you've got a good work ethic and a steady hand. Ever thought about learning carpentry?" Jason hesitated. "I've never really tried it. I'm not sure I could." "You don't know until you try," George said. "I'll teach you if you want." From that moment on, their relationship grew beyond landlord and tenant. George became a mentor, patiently teaching Jason the skills of carpentry, measuring, cutting, fitting, finishing. Jason discovered a talent he hadn't realized was there, and with every nail hammered and board fitted, he felt more hopeful about his future. The experience also gave Jason a chance to share more about himself. He told George about his mother, who was slowly recovering but still needed care. He spoke about his dreams of one day owning a home of his own and providing a stable life for her. George listened with quiet encouragement, offering wisdom from a lifetime of experience. Months passed, and Jason's hard work paid off. He was able to keep up with the rent, his confidence grew, and a new door opened when a local construction company offered him an apprenticeship based on the skills George had helped him develop. The path ahead was still challenging, but for the first time in a long time, Jason saw a future he could build. What began as a desperate knock on a landlord's door turned into a life-changing opportunity born out of kindness and trust. George's offer wasn't just about rent. It was about seeing potential where others saw only debt, about extending a hand when someone was ready to reach out. Jason often thought back to that day and felt grateful, not just for the chance to keep his home, but for the friendship and mentorship that had changed his life forever.